I'd like to bring Saana into the conversation. Saana, you've been involved for many years in dialogue mediation, conflict prevention, capacity building processes at CMI. Martti is studying this foundation. What, if any, role is remaining for us to engage in these processes today in the context of Palestine and Gaza? What are the most effective mechanisms that we have to invest in civil society despite this dire situation? What do you think from your perspective, both personally and also working with the foundation? What are the strategies and ways we can go forward?
Thank you, and thank you for this very interesting event. I think from the point of view of mediation, I think Palestine is in many ways kind of very special case for the same reasons as Francesca then mentioned. There in why in general Israel also is a special case, and of course if we track the history of for example the UN as the main multilateral institution supposed to maintain peace and security, and the kind of critical role that UN in its form then played in the establishment of Israel, and then in the initial attempts to look for a peaceful solution between the Palestinians and the Israelis. We can really see how kind of the role of the UN was marginalized at a very early stage. And from the point of view of mediation and peacemaking between the Palestinians and Israelis, we're really looking at a very special case of a US monopolized process for decades now. And I think for a long time there was this belief that without the US in this role of leading and kind of controlling the whole mediation process, there would never be any settlement because of the special relationship between US and Israel, of course. Whereas the UN multilateral system and all the other states, basically, without aside from few exceptions, played of course by Norway, for example, in the early 90s, was relegated to an insignificant and humanitarian position. And I think this was somehow sustainable, although the status quo between the Palestinians and the Israelis was not a status quo actually until even at the event or the wake of October 2023. It was a creeping facts on the ground situation where there really was no peace process of any kind. There was really no status quo. There was a very asymmetrical situation between the two nations. And I think that process has really led us to where we are now. And it has not been a passive process. It has obviously been a process between a state and a nation, and the state embraced by the international community with specific rights, whereas the self-determination of the Palestinian people has been easier to perhaps relegate into an insignificant part. And I think here, because of the difficulties in the mediation process, I think in 2023 there was this perception that perhaps there is no need to really resolve this conflict at the end of the day. Perhaps there is that, it will stay as it is. And there were other more pressing concerns. And of course, especially after 2022 and the full-scale invasion by Russia of Ukraine, especially in Europe, the focus has shifted and the lenses are for very good, understandable reasons, very much focused on that as the main kind of defining conflict and battle for the Europeans, and relegating the Israel-Palestine question was very easy. So I think now we're at and then at the same time, after October 23, there is like this break in the international system. It was an erosion that was ongoing for a long time of the multilateral system, and perhaps also linked to these dynamics in the international financial and economic sphere. But really now there are limits being broken in warfare, also in mediation, We've never been in a situation where I think mediators, mediation locations, negotiating teams are at such jeopardy and at such risk as they are now. So really there are limits, I think, that are being broken, and they run parallel to this onslaught on Gaza, and also on the West Bank, which of course gets a lot less attention. But I think just one thing, because I wanted to mention, and I think it's kind of down the line, but very crucial, I think, for any future steps in looking at resolution of the situation, I think, is the unity among the Palestinians and the space that it is allowed for this rejuvenation of the Palestinian national movement, for the envisioning of what the future looks like from the Palestinian side. What is the space allowed for that? And this is one of those spaces that has been under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of control because of these very strict conditions that are imposed on the different Palestinian parties. So I think obviously now we're at a situation where there is a lot more global awareness and understanding of the Israel-Palestine question, and perhaps through that there can also be more encouragement within Europe, also within Finland, for Finland to play a more constructive and perhaps mediating role in this situation. And I think there in this, I think the chairmanship the membership of Finland in the UN Security Council is always an opportunity to promote a more active take on peace and security questions globally, but also in the case of Israel and Palestine.
The CMI doing currently with Palestinian civil society, or conflict resolution processes that you think are an important step to continue building? And maybe I'll follow that with this comment I received on here saying, CMI has impartiality as a core value, yet it works with Palestinians, which could be seen as being somewhat partial. Is this a statement, and could it be a good example for others?
Okay, so I'll start from the impartiality question, perhaps. I think as CMI, as an independent mediation organization, we always have to look at what is the kind of added value and what makes sense for, what can we contribute to any given conflict setting. We have worked with Palestinians for I think 15 years now. And in the past, we have focused on the internal Palestinian reconciliation and informal dialogues to support that. At the moment, we are engaged with civil society, with women, and particularly with young women from West Bank and from Gaza, looking at engaging them more actively in building this vision for Palestine. We don't only engage with the Palestinians, we also do engage, CMI as an organization, with Israelis. But when we look at I guess where we started was this asymmetry at the time when we started working, was that there was a clear schism on the Palestinian side, which according to our assessments and our consultations at the time, would benefit from informal dialogues and bringing people together outside of the kind of very strict political elites who are usually the ones engaged in official negotiations.
Goodness.